Hey guys, so have you ever stumbled upon this problem where you are showcasing your projects on your personal portfolio website, but every time that you want to add a new project, you have to hard code the details again and then you have to redeploy it again. So this is working. This is a workable process, but it's not efficient enough, right? So today in this video, I'll be showing you guys how you can create your own projects showcase page in Next.js using Notion as a CMS. So let's get started. So I hope you guys have already created your Notion account and you have worked with Notion before. So let's head over to the integrations page, that is notion.so/profile/integrations. So here you can see your personal development integrations. So I've already created a my website internal integration here, which I use on my own website that's hosted at bhavyadang.in. So let's create a new integration. So add the associated workspace here. I'm just gonna use my own workspace. So the type is going to be internal. Let's leave the logo as it is and then click on save. Oh yeah, the name is required. So let's give it CMS demo. You can name it anything. So save. Then configure integration settings. So now let's copy this integration secret. This is going to be a Notion secret. So you don't need to refresh anything. Let's click on show and then copy. All right. So yeah, let's all right. So I'm just gonna create a notepad and just gonna save it here. All right. So from here we have to give it some capabilities or some things that it has access to. So I don't want I want it to read content, I wanted to update content, I wanted to insert content. I can also give it, I don't want it to have comment capabilities. And for the user capabilities, let's just leave it as read user information without email addresses. So let's click on save and there you go. So I've already created a new page here in Notion. Let's give it a name of website database or something like that. And then inside this, let's create a full page database. Then let's give this a name of projects. And now, so the next step is to enter the details of your project. So I'm just not going to do that manually. I gave Claude a prompt to generate dummy project data based on the properties that we will be going to have for this database. And then I asked it to generate CSV data, which we are going to import from here. So go to the three dots and then merge with CSV. Then select the CSV file that you created and then click on open. It's going to import that data inside Notion. So give it a few seconds and it's going to import all the required data. There we go. So as you can see, there will be a few discrepancies here in the data. So this status should be of type status. So let's change that. All right. So speaking of status, we are going to use the status property here to filter out data, to filter out the projects that we want to showcase and the projects that we don't want to showcase, right? So we only want to showcase the projects that are marked published or live. Okay. And the projects that are in progress or some that are not started will not be shown on the UI. Okay, so this is useful for when you want to add the entries in your Notion database, but let's say the projects are still in development or there is some URL that is not working or the deployment is failing and you have to quickly remove from your showcase. So it's pretty useful in those situations. Then let's change the tags property to a multi-select type, and Notion is going to take care of all the multi-select properties by itself. So yeah, now if you notice, there's also an order property here. We are going to use this order property to sort all the project queries, all the project results that we're going to get from the API in ascending order. That means that the projects that have a smaller value will be shown on top of the showcase. This is useful for when you have a certain order of your projects, basically some projects that you want to showcase first. So let's say these 5 projects are your top 5 projects, and you want to show them to any visitor first. All right, so that's pretty much it for the Notion database. Now let's integrate this database with the integration that we just created. So click on the 3 dots again, go to connections, and then choose the integration that you just created. So it's called CMS demo for my case, and just click on confirm, and there we go. Now this integration that we created has access to this particular database. Okay, so now let's get started with the actual coding process. Let me just head over to my terminal. I've already cd'd into my projects folder. So now let's create a Next.js app. Npx create next app latest, then the name. So I'm just going to give it a name of Nextjs hyphen Notion CMS. Enter. It's going to scaffold a new next app. Choose the default, and it's going to spin up a new project. All right, so let's wait. All right, so now that a project has been created, let's cd into this folder. We named it Nextjs Notion CMS. So cd Nextjs Notion CMS. There we go. And then let's run the development server and see our project in action. Okay, yeah, so 3000 is being used for the demo I just showed you guys earlier. So it's gonna open this project, this app on localhost 3001. All right, there we go. Okay, so let's open this in the code editor. So I'm just gonna open from the right click menu, since my code dot command is registered to cursor. So let me just go to File Explorer, Nextjs Notion CMS, open with code. There we go. Okay, yeah. So now let's create the environment variables first, .env file, and then right here let's paste our Notion secret. So Notion underscore secret equals the Notion secret from our integration. Copy and paste. And the next thing we need for our Notion for our environment variable is the Notion database ID that we are going to use to connect with our database and to query data from our database. So head over to Notion, the database that you just created, and click on copy link from the 3 dots menu, and then just open it in your preferred browser. Then just copy this string that is after the / and before the question mark. Okay, so copy this whole thing and then paste it into the .env file. All right, let me change that to Notion underscore secret. There we go. We won't need to touch this file again. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is to create a logic for querying the data from the Notion API. So for that we need to install few packages. So we need to install the Notion client. So head over to the terminal. Okay, this is busy, so I'm just going to use the integrated terminal from VS Code. So npm I Lucid React is for icon, so I'm just going to install that. We are not going to be focusing on the TypeScript and Tailwind side of things in this tutorial. So this is just going to be purely about Notion and how to use the Notion API. So then at Notion HQ/client. Then yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's create this library folder till this is happening. So this is going to be inside the root directory. So lib folder, and then inside this, let's create a file called notion.ts. Now this is going to be a server only file. So server only. Then let's import client from Notion client. Okay. Now let's pass in the Notion secret to the Notion client that we're going to be creating. So let's get the Notion secret first. Const Notion secret equals process dot env dot notion underscore secret, or whatever name you gave to your secret variable, and export const notion client equals new client. This is going to take options auth, which is equal to notion secret. All right, now let's create a new function called export const get database. I used export here because we are going to be using this get database function in our component in our projects page. Okay, so get database equals, this is going to be an async function which is going to take three arguments. First is id, which is going to be a string, then property, which is going to be order by default. So we are going to use this property variable here to provide this function, this sort function that we are going to be using later to sort on the basis of that property, and the direction of the sort is going to be a direction that we are going to be passing it. So it's going to be default to ascending. It's going to default to ascending, and that's it. So arrow function, and yeah, so now let's check if the Notion secret or the id is absent, then throw new error Notion secret or database id not found. All right, then let's get the query, let's get the response from the database. So const response equals await Notion client dot databases dot query. Now this query is going to take certain options. So this is going to be database id, which is going to be the id that we are going to pass it. Then sorts. So sorts is going to be an array, which is going to take a few options, sorting functions, sorting configurations. So array of objects. So this is going to be the property, which is going to so property and comma. Now this direction is going to be the direction that we are giving it, which is going to be as descending or ascending. So it's going to default to ascending since we did that here, but if it's not passed, then it's going to be either of these two. So this is a union type here, and this direction property is just inferring the values from these two. So it's going to be a string, and it's going to be either of these two strings. It's going to be either descending or ascending. That's it. Then comma. I guess I don't need a comma. Then after the square braces a comma, then filter. So this filter function is going to take an object, then property. This property is going to be status. Then the status is going to equal to published. That has to be capitalized. So published. Okay, so this can be live or done or completed, whatever you have in your database. So that's pretty much it. Now let's come outside this response object, response body, and then return response. All right, now we are going to create a export const fetch projects. So this function that we just created here, this is a generalized get database function. So if you have let's say you're working with a blog database and a projects database or some other form of Notion database, and you must have lots of other database IDs as well. So this is going to be a generalized function which you can use for all the other databases as well. So the function that we are creating here, fetch projects, right here we are going to use this function, and then we are going to pass it the project database ID, because for this tutorial we're only going to be focusing on the project database, right? So if you have other databases like a blog database, then you will have a fetch blogs function, and then you're going to pass in the blog database ID. So squiggly braces, const database ID equals process.env dot, what did I name it, Notion database ID, and this is going to be const query equals await get database, the function that we just created, and we're going to pass it database ID. So if you have some other form of properties, like let's say you have a number property instead of an order property, or you want a descending order, then you can just specify that here. Argument of type string undefined, not variable. Okay, we're going to leave that as it is. Okay, or what you can do is that, let me change that after this. So query dot results. Okay, so you can go to your tsconfig.json file and just change this to false, because this is not so TypeScript focused. Okay. Oh yeah, this has to be a function. So const export fetch projects equals async. Yeah, and this is going to be arrow here. Okay, that's it. So yeah, that's pretty much it with the Notion logic. Okay, so now we are going to be creating our actual projects page. So to create a projects page, that is a slash projects page in a Next.js app, you have to create a folder called projects inside your app directory, and then inside this directory you're going to create a page.tsx file. Now whenever you go to the slash projects endpoint, this page is going to be rendered. So now let's import fetch projects from the Notion library, from the Notion logic that we just created, and let's give it a metadata of metadata. This is going to be a type metadata, which is going to be imported from next equals, and then I'm just going to copy this from my old code. That's it. Okay, now one more thing that we need to add is that export const revalidate. Now this revalidate is used to refetch the data. So whenever you update some value in your Notion database, or you add a new entry to the Notion database, revalidate, so basically this is the time here. So this is going to take 0 time, that is, it's going to show the new updates in your Notion database almost instantly on the showcase, on the UI showcase. But if you want to have a delay, then you can just do, let's say 3600, which is going to be 1 hour. So it's going to regenerate the page at most once every hour. Okay, so I'm just gonna switch this back to 0 because this we are currently developing this thing. So then let's create the component for this page. So export default async function. So now the reason why I have written async function here is because this is going to be purely a server component. We won't have any client code here. So all the markup that we are going to create, something like this is going to be a client side code, right? We would need to use use effect or use state, let's say, and we would need to fetch some data and all. So this would be extracted from a new component that we are going to create called project client. So this right here is going to be purely a server component because we are making use of async functions, async server components, and we are going to we are also using metadata. Okay, so export default async function, then this is going to be called, let's say, projects page or something. Then inside this, let's create a new variable called const projects equals, now await fetch projects. So now we are fetching the projects from our Notion API and then return. Now we're going to create a project client component. So I'm just going to write that here, and we are going to pass in a prop projects, which is going to be equal to the projects that we are fetching. All right, and that's it. So this is going to be undefined because we have still not created that component. So inside your app directory, create a new folder called components, and inside this directory create a file called project client.tsx. Okay, now let's import that. Okay, we have still not defined the export for that file. Okay, so now this is going to be strictly a use client component. So use client, and we are going to be making use of a few things. I'm just going to import that from my test code. So we are going to use state and use effect from React, inter from next font Google, and then from the Lucide React library we are going to be using the Lucide GitHub and the globe icons, and then from the next fonts we are going to be initializing the inter font with the subset ladder. Okay, so now I'm just gonna copy all the markup code from my test code because we're not going to be focusing on this. We're just going to be seeing how Notion API works in action. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy this and paste that right here. So as you can see, we are passing the projects that we are getting from this page, from the projects component, from the projects page, from fetching from the API, and we are passing this as props, as a prop to our project client component, which we just created here, which we just exported here. Okay, so yeah, and that's pretty much it. You can also find this code from the GitHub repository as well, and I have used any here because as I mentioned earlier, we're not going to be focusing on the TypeScript type of things, but if you want to make it type safe, you can create a new interface for your project. And so talking about the interface, the properties that we're getting from the Notion API for our project is going to be something like this. So let me just console.log here, clg projects. So it's going to print out a list of the projects. So okay, projects is type of, okay, yeah, and here we are also getting another error. So let's just give this a quick fix of any for this entire file. That's it. And now let's try running this code. So npm run dev. let's go over to the projects page, and it's being compiled. We are not getting any projects. Okay, why is that so? Let's see. All right, so it was a pretty dumb error from my side. So first let's remove this type inference here. So let's remove this, and then head over to the Notion database and make sure that you have at least one published project here. So all of these are not published, as you can see. That's why we are not getting any projects in the console. So let's just change this to publish, this to publish, and then let's change this first one to publish as well, and then let's say this one. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3 and 4 published projects here. So let's see if that's updated in the project. So there we go. We are getting the projects from the Notion database. And so the logic here is that in the project line, we are getting the response like so. So we're getting an array of objects. So each project is an project is an object which is a page. Okay, so the object is a page, ID of that particular page, then the created time, last edited time created by the user and the user ID, then the last edited by the cover, the icon. So as you can see, there are no cover or icons here, which is why this is null. So the parent is a type of database ID, a database, and the database ID is this. So this is going to be equal to the one we have here. There we go. I think that was it. Yeah, that's it. So then archived false, in trash false. These are the properties that we're actually making use of. Okay, so the properties are GitHub URL, which is an object. So if we take a look at the properties as well, let me just change the console log to projects. Yeah, this is going to be projects dot for each, then CLG P. Okay, not actually P. We are going to use the properties. I think that would be it. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so this is how we're getting the properties. So this is going to be an object which has GitHub URL, ID, type, and the URL that we want, and then the order, which is going to be a type of number and number, the description. So the description and all the string values in Notion have a property called rich text. So the rich text is used for when you have certain types of text, so like a bolded text or an italic text or a heading and a code block or something like that. So that's why it is stored in the rich text here. Then the demo URL, which is a URL, and status, which has an ID, type, status, which is the color, and then the name. So the property status is of type status, and then the color, so the color is green. So you can also use the color property here to notionify your page even more. So there can be a get tag color function which you can use to get all these colors from the tags, and then you can just replicate those colors inside your Notion database. So let's say React here is blue, code mirror is purple. So in your UI showcase, this can be exactly like that. So React can be blue, code mirror can be purple, and so on. All right, so yeah, then the tags and then the name. So that's how the properties look, and this is what we are doing inside our client code as well. We are just mapping through each project and we are just printing out their property values. So project.properties.tags.multiselect, then we are just iterating through each tag and then we're just printing out the name. We can also get the tag color in the same way. That's it. So that's how you can use Notion as a CMS for your Next.js applications. Thank you for watching.